Today on CityCast DC, we're talking about the Washington Opera's departure from the Kennedy Center, the FBI searching a Washington Post reporter's home, and more furor over DC police working with ICE. Plus, in a members-only fourth segment, and a dose of fun, we hope, in a tough week, we're going to talk about the great Congressional Cellphone Caper, in which a staffer is accused of stealing 240 smartphones from Congress and taking a lot of them straight to the pawn shop. I'm here with Andrew Bojan of Washingtonian and my CityCast colleague, Julia Caron. Today is Friday, January 16th. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, Julia.
Hey, Mike.
So, you guys, I'm going to just use the cliche before any of you get a chance to, but like the fat lady has sung for the...
Literally and figuratively, I guess.
Or maybe not literally any longer, because the news of this week has been that the Washington National Opera, which has been at the Kennedy Center in its opera house since basically the beginning of the Kennedy Center, is leaving. It was a weird bit of news because, we have all seen a whole bunch of these cancellations in which artists say, I am uncomfortable with the politics of the Kennedy Center. I don't want to play there. I am canceling my show. And the Kennedy Center, through its executive director, Richard Grinnell, and its PR apparatus, will then go out and slag this person and say, they refuse to play before an audience of conservatives or whatever. In this case, the Kennedy Center leadership didn't. They were like, well, it's time for a new start or something. Maybe we're going to bring in some foreign operas. But this seems like actually a huge, huge thing to me. How did you guys react to it?
I mean, I've never been to an opera, but I feel like I've missed the boat. I feel like I've missed the chance to go to an opera and I don't know, see Italian sung at very high pitches and very eloquently. I don't know. I feel like I've lost the opportunity now, which is sad.
The other good thing about going, and I'm actually a fan, is that no matter how old you are, when you go to the opera, you have a very good chance of being the youngest person there. So that's always been one of my favorite things about it.
But I think that gets us to really the core of the challenge with the Kennedy Center post-Trump takeover, which is that there's all this talk about the politics of it, right? According to Richard Grinnell, who's running the place post-takeover, it's about these woke artists refusing to play for audiences that don't agree with them. But the thing is, ultimately, the federal government gives some money for maintaining the facility as a memorial to John F. Kennedy, and apparently now to Donald Trump. But the programming is supposed to pay for itself. And that means basically you're putting on, some combination of high culture, like opera and symphony and dance, plus touring Broadway shows. And you are selling tickets to people who live in driving distance of the Kennedy Center and occasional tourists. And the first group means probably kind of old, not that edgy Washington area people. Retirees, culture vans, my mom. And that group is fairly horrified by the changes and more reticent about buying tickets. And at a certain point, money has to come in the door. And so with the opera, the version, what we hear is ticket sales have really plummeted post takeover. Obviously, the opera, most of their programming is stuff that was written more than a century ago, in some cases 2 centuries ago. So it's not the programming itself is a commentary on the moment, but just a certain percentage of the audience is voting with their pocketbooks.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that about the whole Kennedy Center takeover that I find hard to fathom, because I don't really understand who this is for. I don't think that there's a lot of MAGA people who care that much about the opera in Washington, D.C., or the National Symphony Orchestra. And, the Kennedy Center has responded to most of this stuff just with like blistering tweets.
It's so weird to see that coming from the Kennedy Center. It's so weird.
It's so weird, isn't it? And like, again, like, who's the audience for these changes?
Unless you understand it as like an exercise in like assertions of dominance over the culture.
Sure, but I
like
mean,
that assertions isn't going to lead to butts in seats, which is obviously the point of a venue.
And it's also not like the Kennedy Center was some like super edgy venue that was putting on.
Do you consider Bella Fleck, like playing with the National Symphony Orchestra, like edgy? I mean, if you consider the banjo edgy, like, I don't know.
I mean, like the opera and the NSO have always done like some pretty interesting stuff, but like all of those institutions, they have to pad that out with the stuff that everyone wants to go and see. And, and that's like got to be most of your repertoire each year. Plus, you mentioned this, Julia, but like these things take a long time to come together. And so it's actually really tough to do something that's going to be of the moment, especially in opera, because, you need like 3 years to get a production going.
Right. The other thing about this, and I didn't know this beforehand, is that like, obviously like opera houses are a thing, but like this isn't like a rock show where you can just like plug in your guitar and you do a sound check before it, like the anthem or whatever, and you just adjust accordingly. Like apparently there's some big deal stuff that goes into the actual structure of the building. So like, where is the Washington National Opera gonna perform? Like the Warner Theater is the only option I can think of.
Well, maybe Lisner. They did move a production to Lisner. Was it last year? In November, they had to move Macbeth there for one night, but it was actually hard because there wasn't enough room for the orchestra.
So I think this is, but like we're going to do a full episode on the future of the Kennedy Center and the opera sometime soon. But my hunch is that the storyline in the next year is going to evolve from, these sort of fights with some artist who, dares to say, I don't want to be associated with this, to like actual like dollars and cents fights. There's a bunch of union contracts. I mean, like a lot of arts organizations, the Kennedy Center is heavily unionized. So like there's a ticket takers union and so on. So there's going to be a bunch of those contracts happen to be coming up. And, I think the new leadership probably is not especially disposed towards organized labor. But even if they were, the new leadership is going to be suddenly worrying about money. So they're going to have to, they're going to be extra motivated to be skinflints. So like that's going to be in the backdrop. What happens to the National Symphony? These are these very sort of practical, like almost like business reporter kind of stories. And I think for all of us in DC that, look, Washington is, this is a region of 6 million people, so it's one of the bigger ones in the country, but it's not like the biggest city in the country. And the city's always been like inordinately proud that like we have a National Symphony Orchestra and we have an opera company. And a lot of large American cities don't have those things. And so I think there's some anxiety about like, well, will we get to continue to have those things? And how to, even though most people are just like you, Julia, and don't go to the opera.
Cretin.
And
Unfortunately,
Bojan is the freak here.
Listen. The two polar opposites, and in the middle we shall meet. I don't know.
But even though you're the outlier, I suspect that most people who would never actually pay for the opera kind of like the notion that, like, yes, I'm the kind of guy who lives in a city that has an opera company and a world-class symphony and so on. And if those things start to crumble, that again is like one of these sort of changes to the psyche of like Trump era Washington that may not be so easy to repair.
Yeah, I will say like the Washington National Opera now has their own website and you can like go and support them. You can like pay them directly and donate, which is kind of wild. I don't know, man. Like, do I have to sign up for the Washington National Opera like newsletter now and like go to some production? Is that what we've come to, guys?
The other question
Tears
too,
of a clown.
I know. Yes.
The other thing besides venues too is the opera doesn't have its own orchestra. So that's going to be an interesting thing for them to figure out. The Kennedy Center has an orchestra for the opera.
I mean, if there's any opera house architects out there, this might be the time to
Your time to shine, baby.
really make a proposal somewhere.
Don't miss Folger Theater's 4th annual Reading Room Festival on stage January 22nd through the 25th at the Folger Shakespeare Library. Join us as we collaboratively re-envision Shakespeare's works, explore the vibrant musicality of Shakespeare's verses, and reimagine the stories crafted by other early modern playwrights in this 4-day festival of staged readings, panel discussions, workshops, and community celebrations. This year's lineup features works from Alexa Babakania, Alberto Bonilla, Barbara Fuchs, and Marcus Gardley, with Arena Stage's artistic director, Hannah S. Sharif, directing one staged reading. Celebrate the spirit of collaborative theater making and community with the Folger. Enjoy all the festival has to offer for only $125 by purchasing an all-access pass at folger.edu/readingroom. Get yours today.
Hey, so another piece of news, and I apologize for the unrelenting grimness, but here we are. The FBI executed a search warrant at the home of a Washington Post reporter, Hannah Nathanson. This is obviously, sort of on the national level and on the constitutional level, like a big deal. The Trump administration is saying, well, we're just investigating someone else who may have leaked things to her, but previous administrations have had policies against searching reporters, in part because those reporters' bosses control a lot of public opinion. But also Hannah Nathanson, I think a lot of CityCast listeners probably know that byline because, this is not a person who has been doing national intelligence, deep state, CIA exposés. She covers the federal government. She covers the workforce. She covers a lot of us and our neighbors and our conditions of employment. And has been she wrote a first person thing towards the end of last year about her work and the insane year she's had. But it's just that's the stuff that is drawing where the leaks to her and her reporting on those leaks are drawing scrutiny.
Yeah, and we're talking about some a precedent that goes back to 1980 and the Privacy Protection Act of 1980, which, as a jailhouse lawyer, aka a reporter, I know follows Zurcher versus Stanford Daily, a case in which the Supreme Court found that authorities could search a reporter's house.
Boshan, you and your colleagues at Chat GPT and Associates must be really sharp.
I resent that. I Googled this, but the weird thing too to me is, where is Jeff Bezos on this?
Well, so literally, and this may bring us back to the Kennedy Center. Literally, where is Jeff Bezos? Because so at the end of this month, the Melania Trump movie has its star-studded debut at the Kennedy Center in a deal apparently negotiated while Bezos was at Mar-a-Lago. Amazon paid the First Lady what seems to me like a pretty insane amount, $40 million for life rights and for the right to make this documentary about her. They're debuting it this month. There's going to be a big star-studded opening. Is Bezos going to be there? Which is to say, is the boss of the person whose house was raided going to be there to inaugurate the movie that he paid the president's wife a lot of money to make? The optics here are suboptimal, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And has anybody watched anything on Prime lately?
Yeah, I watched I watched The Night Manager last night. I watched the first 2 episodes.
Good.
How many ads?
A lot of ads.
So many.
Were you interrupted by?
We were actually
talking about
worst experience
in streaming right now.
But those ads can go straight to the First Lady. Maybe she'll spend them on beautification of the Rose Garden.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to watch this thing anyway. We know somebody who wrote a book about Melania, and I don't think it really burned up the sales charts. I just don't think that I don't think there's that much interest in her except when she does something like spectacularly weird, like wear that coat.
No, I don't think she's got just as a marketing thing, like there's certain people in the MAGA world who've become sort of icons and people want to like buy their book and, associate themselves with the brand. And I don't think she's ever really been one of those. I mean, like people got nothing against her in that world, but as like previous books and stuff haven't sold enormously. Maybe this movie will be amazing and people will, out of some combination of real curiosity and morbid curiosity, want to look at it. But, it's January. That's not the time of year when studios typically drop their Oscar bait. That has historically been. I mean, I know everything's changed because of streaming, but that's historically been the time you drop something that blows.
We're talking about this as if it's like an actual release and not a bribe, which is like what it is, right? Like, nobody cares about a Melania movie. This is a bribe to the president of the United States.
I don't know. Are we going to get the Amazon Prime, documentary of like the FBI raiding Hannah Nathanson's house? Like, where are we going with this? Like, I would like to know. I mean,
the Post editorial page opined, finger waggingly about this and how it is bad, and that Post reporters will continue to pursue stories, et cetera, and didn't, which has often been the case, didn't try to sort of be cute and be like, but Trump's critics are bad too. All the same, for what remains Washington's dominant newspaper, the source for all of us on this call who talk and write and opine about local news. It is still the largest source of information and has a bunch of really amazing reporters. It's just awfully awkward. And again, people who cover something like the federal workforce, which once would have been seen as like a not particularly sexy or dangerous subject area, it's changed real quick.
they created a whole beat for her that did not exist previously. And like in her first person accounting, she basically was like, yeah, it was like me and my fiance and Signal in bed together. And he was like, you have to put the phone down. And she's like, I feel like I can't because everything just feels so urgent. And like, we're a year on from that now, which is bananas to me.
So what happens now on this? Andrew, do you know if like they searched her personal laptop or work laptop?
They took 2 of her devices.
They took the devices, or did they just like download?
No,
Okay.
They took the devices. I assume they're going to break into them, copy them, and then give them back. It's chilling, especially for those of us who communicate with people who need anonymity to tell you stuff. I hope that she had good security on Signal, and she probably did. So there may be a limit to what they can get, but everything leaves a trail.
There's an ongoing investigation of this person who they suspect gave her information. But as far as I know, there is no like formal next step, a hearing or anything like that is to follow.
It's done. Like they've already done it, And what are we going to do? Like impose some kind of like accountability on this administration? I mean, good luck.
All right. So this week, a second big shot candidate, Kenyon McDuffie, and now former DC council member, he just resigned, is announced he's running for mayor. So he will be the centrist in the race against more progressive Janice Lewis George. Maybe there'll be others. However many there wind up being, I think they have to deal. One of the big issues that they're going to get asked about a ton between now and the Democratic primary is this question of the Metropolitan Police Department of D.C. and to what extent it works with ICE. There was a report released this week by a couple of council members about the MPD's coordination with ICE and what that has led to. Basically, this report concludes it's not especially mitigated. It concludes that it has been a disaster for the public trust in the police. One of the council members, Brianne Nadeau, said she thinks it may take generations, plural, to rebuild that level of trust. Look, I think given how transient our city is, I think nothing takes generations. So that's a bit of hyperbole, but this is like a very sharp point. And I think we see this sort of counterpoint this week in Minneapolis, where local officials who have obviously a much stronger leg to stand on, given that they're part of an actual state, have said we don't want anything to do with what with ICE acting as an occupying army. DC's leadership has not obviously had that luxury. But the question of like how much did Muriel Bowser's administration play nice unnecessarily or necessarily with ICE, and what would a successor mayor do differently is going to be a huge thing for the upcoming election.
Yeah, I mean, we got a voice memo from producer Adam Sage, who's in Twin Cities. This is what he had to say about everything that's going down in Minneapolis right now.
Hey, DC team. This is Adam Sage, one of the producers at CityCast Twin Cities. Wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what it's been like over here, as I'm sure you're seeing a lot in the news. It's very scary. It's been hard. It's been hard to focus on everyday tasks when every time you open your phone you see something terrible happening that is often just a couple of blocks away from wherever you are. And it's been interesting seeing how the Minneapolis Police Department has adhered to the separation ordinance that says they're not supposed to collaborate with immigrations and custom enforcement. There was a widely criticized federal raid back in June where local police seemed to provide crowd control for the federal officers. And there has been much less of that in the past month or so. Police have been very busy cleaning up messes after ICE agents take folks out of their cars and leave the car in the middle of the street, and then the police department has to take care of that, and they've had to spend some $2 million on overtime for the police. And we've seen our police chief, Brian O'Hara, be very vocal against the current immigration enforcement surge in the Twin Cities.
The only thing I can think about when I listen to this is like how kind of scary it was when the National Guard kind of first took to the streets in Washington in August. Like it felt very visceral and very real. And that was something that like Mayor Bowser, if I'm remembering right, like couldn't really do anything about. But in this case, like, can she do something? Can she just tell them don't cooperate? Like, what can she actually impose to the police right now?
I mean, I think you got to subdivide that question. Maybe Bojan's colleagues at the ChatGPT and Associates law firm can help us with this. There's like, what legally can she do? And then what practically can she do given the amount of leverage that the Trump administration has over her?
And it's not just leverage, Mike. You know, that DC has to coordinate with the feds on all kinds of things. We have a whole center dedicated to that kind of coordination for big events that take place in town. So it even more so than the not being a state thing, there's the whole integration with federal law enforcement, federal disaster response, and all that stuff that's really baked into the city's relationship with the feds here.
Right. And I think the most powerful argument a local mayor can make about ICE cooperation, because the Trump administration's argument is, look, they're enforcing the law. Police are supposed to enforce the law, period. Is that like real cops want to go out and catch, rapists and murderers and stuff. And if everybody runs when they see you coming because they're afraid you're going to round them up and deport them, you are not going to get witnesses helping you. You're not going to get tipsters helping you to catch actual dangerous perps of whatever immigration status we're talking about. And that's, sadly, that's an argument that a lot of the more like lefty members of people in politics are not that comfortable making, because it implies like admiration for the work of like quote unquote real cops. But I do think like that is like a line of rhetoric that could have some kind of maybe impact in people who would otherwise be like, yeah, they should enforce immigration law. But here we are.
I will say one of the things that you mentioned in all of this coordination is like Jeffrey Carroll, who's the new police chief, replaced Pamela Smith, has this theory that like the partnership between DC police and the federal agencies since the end of the Trump emergency order has actually encouraged like federal agents to focus on violent crime. Basically, it maybe blunted some of the widespread focus on nonviolent offenders. And I don't know that that's true or not, but like that coordination with the Guard, is that different than the coordination or lack thereof with ICE? I'm not sure. I'm trying to read between the lines of what he's saying here, but I don't quite know what he's getting at.
I feel like the MPD is sort of, I mean, they are being kind of Jesuitical about this, that like, okay, under DC law, not just policy, police are not going to inquire about someone's immigration status, do things like that. But, you know, if they're driving around in a car with ICE or they're saying nice things to them or whatever, that's just being collegial with fellow law enforcement. This report, I think that what is sort of powerful about it is that what it's talking about is like how the public sees their law enforcement, and these sort of pictures of collegiality at the scene of some kind of ICE-oriented stop. Those pictures and that reputation according to this report, is itself damaging, and it makes a lot of sense that it would be. That is a much harder thing to avoid, though. And just for whatever it's worth, I don't know if you guys saw this story in Slate, but about the
yes, is this the woman who signed up to be an ICE
yes.
agent but didn't really sign up to be an ICE
right.
agent?
So the point is, like, she wrote about she applied for ICE, made all these claims, and they were like, "You're hired," which is just to say, this is an agency that is staffing up in a hurry, is apparently using AI, so that people who were like, you know, if you said you were like a compliance officer at some company, that like the word officer triggered the AI to think you were already law enforcement, and so you got your hiring accelerated. The point is, there is a dangerous thing happening where like a law enforcement agency is hiring huge amount of people in a hurry. And even if we're talking about the best intended law enforcement, that is a recipe for letting in some turkeys. And the turkeys with guns on the streets will do dangerous and bad things, which is just to say, it's statistically quite likely that there's going to be more moments of potential standoff between ICE and local authorities. That if an ICE agent does something that violates DC law, what happens? And that's going to put the next mayor, the interim police chief, the permanent police chief. It's going to put all these people in uncomfortable situations. I don't know from my own conversations whether there are protocols that they've put in place so that they don't have to like make it up on the fly if some future crisis happens. But I think I'd put pretty good money on there being some moment where they're going to have to like gut check on this.
You know, and I think this is also why you see so many fewer people running for the mayor than running for the non-voting delegate slot in Congress.
Yeah, who wants this job right now?
It's the worst job in town.
I think no matter what, private sector, public sector, whatever, being in like responsibility without complete authority it's just a recipe for being personally miserable and publicly unpopular. So. All right, I want to give a big thank you to our newest CityCast DC neighbors, Kate G and JG. Thank you for your support. Today, paid subscribers get a bonus 4th roundup chat about the crazy, wild, kind of delicious case of a congressional staffer who stole, allegedly, 240 phones. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $10 a month. Members get ad-free listening, exclusive members events, and an extra events newsletter every week. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Andy Reese, Julia Karen, Ash Durbin, and Elizabeth Kama. Newsletter editors Kayla Cote-Stemmerman and Elizabeth Kama wrote our fabulous newsletter Hey DC this week, and our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from Philip Ayers from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, why not write an aria about it and turn that into part of an opera that can be performed I don't know, like the anthem or something. We'll be back Tuesday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.